Marriage equality has finally been achieved in New York State. The aftermath, next on the Atheist Viewpoint. Welcome once again to the Atheist Viewpoint. I'm your co-host, Ron Barrier.
And I'm Dennis Horvitz.
Our other co-host. And today we're going to talk about an historic event that took place just before midnight on Friday, June 24th, 2011. And that's when Governor Andrew Cuomo signed into law a bill passed by a Republican-controlled Senate to allow gays to marry, to allow gays to commit themselves publicly and legally in a committed relationship, just like millions of other people. I think it was a great day for everybody.
I am proud to be a New Yorker.
Yeah, so am I. You're proud to be a New Yorker, and of course, the bill had to be hammered out with the usual exemptions and special rights for supernaturalists, which is truly amazing. As here we are now in the 21st century, and once again, it's supernaturalism that needs protections and exemptions and special rights every time the human race takes another step forward towards true civility and equality.
Well, and one thing, and this is really no surprise, but even after the New York State Senate debated and settled the exemption clause, people were still going out all over the internet claiming that clergy persons were going to be forced to marry same-sex couples.
Well, that goes along with the same thing that 40 years ago, Madalyn Murray O'Hair filed with the FCC to eliminate religious programming on the radio.
Right.
This is another one of those. I wouldn't even supernatural myths, because they're not even urban myths. I mean,
I don't know. It's right up there along with the Charles Darwin's deathbed conversion and those kind of things,
Well, Dennis, on one of the last shows when I was here while you and David were away, I pointed out that on the gay marriage debate, just like any other debate, abortion, whatever you want to talk about, okay, religion always has its foot on both sides of the issue, so that this way, no matter what the outcome, religion wins. So there were a lot of in New York we know of, and there are a lot of churches and congregations around the country that cater to the gay and lesbian community, and obviously they're from the same Christian faith, another of the various 243,973 derivative offshoots there are of the Christian religion. But here you have on one side priests and clergy who are willing to do gay marriage, and of course the myth that on the other side they're going to be forced.
I've got to tell you something. Right now I'm reading this book that actually was given to me at least 15 or more years ago, called In God's Name, and it details it claims to make the case that Pope John Paul I was murdered. Now, I'm not taking a position on it because I'm still reading it, and I tend to be skeptical of conspiracy theories.
And he's also not the first pope who was considered to be murdered.
Right. But it's interesting how, at least I'm only I'm less than a third of the way through it, but it describes just the whole operations were going on in the Vatican, And apparently in 1966, just after Vatican II, there was a lot of sentiment within the Curia and amongst the cardinals actually in favor of birth control. And Pope Paul VI had commissioned a report, and the report almost came out specifically recommending that not only was birth control permissible, that it was necessary. And then, of course, with the Byzantine hierarchy, that major report issued by 68 cardinals was submitted to a smaller committee that was more controlled by conservative, actually reactionary cardinals. And of course, we all know the result. The Humanae Vitae banned birth control. But it's interesting that even as the reason I bring it up is because you just mentioned that mentioned clergy that show compassion and common sense towards gay couples and other people, usually wind up being sat on, pushed aside, demonized right along with the people that they're trying to cater to. You know.
What I'm confused about, Dennis, and I'm sure maybe some of you might be, is that even in these Christian churches that do, there's got to be a better word than cater, but who make themselves available to the gay and lesbian community.
Minister to them.
Minister to them. Still read from the same book that condemns them.
Right.
So, I mean, I don't understand.
It does get confusing, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, what it is that these gay and lesbian Christians are showing the same type of compartmentalization.
Oh, sure.
Of their religious beliefs in their real lives, just as much as a lot of other Christians.
Because it's that I think it's that center of the brain that needs to believe.
I guess
the
there is.
wiring. It's the wiring of the brain. I mean, another example is that Sam Harris has said he doesn't understand how the Jewish community can still believe in God after the Holocaust. You know, but that is an example. It comes from the same part of the brain, that needs to believe.
Yeah, I guess it's the same part of the brain of the disappointed Christians when there wasn't a rapture on May 21st.
Right.
They will still believe because
they will rationalize.
Or even Camping himself said, "Oh well, it was a spiritual beginning."
Yeah.
Oh, did you know, by the way, he had a stroke?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
He can't speak anymore. Or at least so far.
Well, I mean, certainly we don't wish ill will on anyone, and,
No.
and I hope he does recover.
Sure.
But the fact that he can't speak to anyone,
well,
that's kind of good.
I read something that it was about the stroke may have, somebody speculated, I don't know how true it is, that the stroke may have been brought on because after his rapture failed to happen, that the emotional pressure that he was going through, I mean, he's probably a true believer and going through some cognitive dissonance.
Maybe.
I just throw that into the mix. I'm not saying
I mean, the humorous take was that he had a
Yes.
stroke after he realized how many millions he made a couple of weeks before the rapture.
Yeah. I mean, but what you were saying, in using that as an example is that about the need to believe. It isn't just the fact that people continue to rationalize after the rapture failed to happen. It's the fact that he made the prediction once before and nothing happened, and people needed to believe him anyway.
And this is strike 2 now.
Yeah, this is strike 2.
And of course, October 21st will be strike 3.
Right.
Interesting. Of course, right after this whole thing, there's a lot of speculation. Of course, now some of the right-wing media, and I have a tendency to agree with a little bit with them, is that this vote was also an economic vote. The state and the city need money.
Yes.
This is an entirely new source of income for businesses, from caterers to clothing and food and automobiles and florists and catering halls, except the Knights of Columbus. We'll bring that up in a minute, and Orthodox Jewish. But that all these businesses are now going to benefit, and hopefully maybe even they'll hire and put people to work.
Right. And you know what? That's not a bad reason.
No, it's not. It's not. But I think that the fact is that two people can now commit themselves to a legal relationship.
Yes.
And benefit from that legal relationship is just a great thing.
Bottom line, marriage is a contract. Legal adults are allowed to enter into a contract. End of story.
And as I heard the leader of the Interfaith Alliance, he's a minister, and he was for the gay marriage. And I think he said it best in 4 simple words: love is not sin.
Right.
You know.
Right.
And that, and as these hardcore guys like the Catholic Church and the Orthodox Jews and all them, they claim their God is love. Well, they certainly do not represent that sentiment. Let's see some of the other reactions. I think. Oh, by the way, Seth Foreman. He's the author of a book called American Obsession, Race and Conflict in the Age of Obama. On the Thursday before the vote, on June 23rd, he had an editorial in the Daily News called Gay Marriage, 5 Bad Side Effects. Now, one was religious freedom. And let me quote him now. Proponents of gay marriage think their view is the latest expression of enlightened humanitarianism. Actually, I would have to agree. That means people who believe in the sanctity of traditional marriage may soon wind up on the wrong side of enlightened bigotry. That's not true. If you believe in traditional marriage, embrace it with all your heart and soul. Just don't tell someone else what they should do.
Yeah, see, they know they can't win on any other argument, so they try to play the scare. They play the scare card.
Be an either or as I saw, it's funny. I traveled to Manhattan on Sunday, and on the side of a huge storage building, which this building's about 5 stories high, this was a painted sign, not something that is attached, but painted on the building.
Right.
And the sign itself was like 4 stories of the 5, and it said, "You don't like gay marriage? Don't get gay married."
Excellent. Excellent.
But the fact is, no one is trying to take the traditionalists away. You want,
Right. Of course
I mean,
not.
in this context, I'm a marriage traditionalist.
Of course.
I married a woman. Why? Well, because I like women. That's the way I was born. Those who say that the gay lifestyle is a choice, to tell you, I'll be honest with you, Dennis. And I'm sure, viewers out there, did you ever choose to be straight?
And you know what? I'll up the ante. So what if it's a choice?
Well, yeah, so what? If you find more satisfaction and there's a mutually fulfilling relationship through that choice, you're right. Who cares?
Yeah.
You're not going after kids.
Yeah, I mean, nobody has the right to go after children anyway.
Right.
Period. So what if it's a choice? It's a choice that everybody has that right. They have that right to make. So, on one hand, well, I think certainly medical evidence that, the brain may be wired for homosexuality or for the tendency to be for homosexuality. But
maybe it's more for bi, and then we make
who knows? Well, I think there's a spectrum, but regardless, and I certainly accept the medical evidence, but even if there was no medical evidence, if it's a choice, it's a choice. They have the right. It's a choice that everybody has the right to make.
There's a lot of heterosexual married men out there who may have had some sort of experimental encounter when they were younger, in their teens or what have you. That didn't. But anyway, so I think his whole thing of this enlightened bigotry is baloney. No one is against traditional marriage.
Right. Well, that's the persecution card.
He goes on to say a recent Newsday editorial said opponents, quote, will be seen by future generations in much the same light as those who oppose school desegregation. He may have a point. In the future, they'll look back and say, you mean you were against it? What was wrong with you? You know? And but that's neither here nor there, and who cares? History plays out the way it does. Devout Catholics, Orthodox Jews, and ironically is Mr. Seth Foreman's words, not mine, the 70% of African Americans who oppose gay marriage have become the new Ku Klux Klan? Well, no one is saying that. See, no one is saying
man.
that.
See, but they have to use. I mean, they're not talking to adults.
No.
They're talking to the terrified child in people.
What's amusing is that 70%, if this is an accurate figure, of African Americans are oppose gay marriage. And frankly speaking, it seems sometimes like 70% of African Americans are opposed to marriage, with the number of single parent families within that community. And that is, and don't call me a racist, because that's brought out by sociologist Orlando Patterson, who wrote, he attributes high out-of-wedlock birth rates among African Americans. And he's trying to tie it to a history of slavery, job discrimination, and the welfare state. To me, that's blaming someone else for your own choices. But it is no surprise, though, that in the African American community, the number of stable marriages is not probably where they would want it to be.
Well,
So before opposing anybody else getting married, get your own house in order. And I strongly suggest this. Now, he goes on to talk about also withered traditional marriage. And he says, gay marriage may, as its proponents insist, strengthen the ideal of marriage by offering the highest public acceptance only to those in committed relationships. And it's a subject we probably should talk about another time. They're talking about now the domestic partnership laws, should they get rid of them? Because they were instituted at the beginning to sort of be a halfway house.
Yeah, I once people have proposed that all unions should be considered civil unions, and if people want to refer to themselves as being married, fine. If church organizations want to conduct marriages, fine. But the actual legal recognition would be considered a civil union, and of course all the rights that that the state gives to married couples and to the children, the offspring of those relationships, would remain intact. It's just that the official designation would be civil union.
Okay, but also the gays rejected the term civil union.
Yeah, I understand.
Marriage.
I understand why they did that, but that's because the word marriage has the meaning that it has.
Yeah.
But and again, this is just that it has been suggested that rather than just make civil union a blanket term for any legally committed relationship.
Well, like I said, now the state with these domestic partnership things, which were put in place to try and make amends to the gay community by giving them some sort of protection, is not going to be needed anymore.
Right.
So, basically the state is taking, as much as the religious hate it, the state is now wrestling with the idea of, well, should we just promote marriage and forget the domestic partnership thing?
Right. Well, I don't know. I mean,
it's another question.
Yeah,
really.
It is another question, and I don't claim to know the intricacies or even the simplicities of if there are any of insurance laws. But it would seem to me that if you get an insurance policy or workers' benefits under your employer, you should be allowed to name who the beneficiary is going to be.
Well, you should be able to do that whether you're married or not, yes.
Yeah.
Anyway, he goes on to say that eliminating the complementarity, and that's a word used by the bishops, the complementarity of the sexes.
Spell it.
COMPLEMENTARITY, complementarity of the sexes in marriage changes its essence. It may be old-fashioned to believe women are still necessary to domesticate sexually predatory men. Now, this next sentence really gets me. But most social arrangements in which men operate without attachment to women are deeply dysfunctional. Vatican, anyone? Roman Catholic Church, anyone?
Would you read that sentence again? I'm not just.
But most social arrangements he's not saying all, but he says most social arrangements in which men operate without attachment to women are deeply dysfunctional.
I just don't understand how he has the gall to say that in view of the recent and ongoing controversy, you know, within the Catholic Church.
Well,
for once, I'm speechless.
well, in this case, part of the thing with the church, and a lot of people forget this, that why are, and it's not just gays, but why are dysfunctional men sometimes attracted to that vocation? When you're brought up, and I was brought up within that Catholic religion.
You were raised Catholic?
Yeah, I was raised Catholic. They would tell you, with God, all things are possible.
Mm-hmm.
That if you immerse yourself in
Mm-hmm.
faith, God will come to your riding to your rescue. So to me, it's logical that if you grow up within the context of this Catholic religion and you have these types of deep feelings, which because of society's view of these feelings, you're conflicted, you're depressed, you would seek solace within the confines of the church in order to try and overcome that. But now this kind of acceptance in the general community of gay people may actually ameliorate that.
Mm-hmm.
And people will not have to resort to religion if they have feelings about their own sexuality when, in fact, there is a more openness about those feelings.
Yeah, I think that that may have some effect. The whole dealing, because I follow this controversy about the sexual predators within the Catholic Church, and it isn't just the Catholic Church, by the way.
No, it isn't.
But there are certain problems intrinsic to the Catholic Church that are, I think, probably have more to do with a cover-up than with the actual crimes themselves.
Yeah, yeah.
But the recent John Jay report, describing why and how of Catholic clergy molesting children and all that stuff. There are certain things that I did agree with, and one of them was that it wasn't homosexuality per se that was causing it, and it wasn't celibacy per se, but it gets. One thing it didn't address was the culture of secrecy, the fact that the church has stonewalled, intimidated witnesses.
But wouldn't they, in fact, be telling you they are withholding you from your natural tendencies?
Well, in that
they're telling you to shut them off?
Right.
And it's not natural to shut them off.
Yeah, but the only reason I mention it is because in the it doesn't explain. For instance, it isn't homosexuality isn't the cause of pedophilia. In fact, the majority of pedophiliacs are pedophiles are heterosexual males.
Aren't they family members most of the
Most
time?
of it's Actually, the minority of priests actually offend, and the majority of pedophiles are people who are either family members or known to the victims. Mm-hmm. This is going on in the Southern Baptist Conference. It's going on in some of the Orthodox Jewish communities.
Oh, we just had one recently
Yeah.
here in New York. Another one.
It's going on. It's going on in. There are reports from India where Hindus, gurus, are molesting girls and children and that kind of thing. So it isn't just, but they're. So it isn't just homosexuality is not a major factor at all in the pedophilia thing. But it's interesting that how they that they're trying to in this one argument, we're running out of time. I'm sorry,
Yes,
but in this blog written by someone named Peter Montgomery, he kind of says that this organization, the National Organization for Marriage, and Catholic bishops, of course, are very bitter about this marriage equality passage, and they, of course, are responding to their quote-unquote betrayal especially because some of the senators that voted for it had previously voted against it.
Right, right.
And he says right out that they were outmaneuvered by a straight Catholic governor in one of the most heavily Catholic states in the country. So now they're playing this organization, National Organization for Marriage, and the Catholic bishops are trying to ramp up the warfare. And we haven't heard the last of this.
Right, right.
But they're claiming that the lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transsexual rights supporters, they accuse them of manipulating the language by the use of terms such as equality. So I don't know.
Well, it's not manipulation. It is equality.
It is
pure
equality.
Pure and simple. And if you'd like to know more about American Atheists, please contact our website at www.atheist.org. There you could subscribe to our newsletter. You can also, you can also. We have the American Atheist magazine, and maybe over one of these next few weeks we'll drag out an issue and go through a couple of articles and show the American Atheist magazine. Atheism, all right? It's not a philosophy. It's not a religion. It's a conclusion. Right. And once again, we thank you for joining Dennis Horvitz and myself, Ron Barrier, and we will see you on the next episode of the Atheist Viewpoint.
Bye. Thanks for watching.